What's up, you Paleo hackers? Welcome to the first ever video podcast. Super excited to get this going. We decided to take it to the next level, and instead of just bringing you weekly audio interviews, we want to take it up a notch and bring you weekly video interviews. I'm a huge fan. I think nonverbals are massive in communication. It's how we communicate. I think that a lot gets lost when you're just listening to voices and you're not seeing people. Ideally, we would do it in person, but this is the next best thing. So I'm excited this week to kick it off. We got my main man, the fat-burning man, Abel James here. Talk about what he's been up to the past 6 months, living on the road, eating on a budget, eating with no food, just a freezer, and how to minimize your life, simplify it, and make it better. Real quick, Paleohacks.com is the place to be. Check out the forum there. Check out the blog posts. ClarkDanger.com for me, but this is YouTube. This is my home. So if you search Clark Danger, you'll find tons of videos. All right, you ready for the show? Ready for you to hear it? Let's go see what my main man, Abel James, has to say. Okay, Paleo Hackers, with me today is author, biohacker, and host of the Fat Burning Man Show, Mr. Abel James himself. What up, Abel?
Life is grand, man. What's cooking?
Life is grand, and Fat Burning Man Show, I read, was the #1 show on iTunes in 8 countries or something like that.
When I first started, it was kind of nuts because it's still, I'm sure you can relate to this. You feel like you're just talking into a microphone at your computer.
Yeah.
And like the rest is all kind of magic or made up or whatever. But yeah, it was a friend of mine back at the beginning of the Paleo days from the first Paleo conference, actually, Dean Dwyer, who sent me this screenshot of like all these podcasts, and there was like Jillian Michaels, and then mine was number 2. This is after like a couple months after I started, and I'm like, I didn't even know what this chart was, or that people measured that stuff.
Right.
But yeah, all of a sudden it just kept like going up, and I think it was that weekly clip of doing it for like 2.5 years every single week, and bringing on people who were kind of like out of the loop in some cases, not in the normal circles, who people hadn't heard from, like. The show with my mom was one of the most popular shows back in the day. And like, it was fun to make it like personal and real. And I've been off the grid for the past like 6 months and just now starting to come back, and it's awesome.
Okay. And so I was kind of stalking my guests before the call like I always do. Yeah. And I did notice you went off the grid for about 6 months or so. So
Totally.
So what were you doing? Living it up?
We were living in Austin for the past like 5-6 years, and in June we decided to sell everything, including my house and cars, and just travel the world for a while because we're gonna, get old and boring and settle down and have kids sometime in the next few years probably. So we're just trying to get our wiggles out, and so we went to Fiji, Australia. Lived in Bali for a while, and then did a road trip of like all of North America for the rest of the time. And like lived in national parks, and mostly just spent a lot of time in nature, a lot of time in the woods, not really talking to anybody, just recharging. And it's been awesome.
So you lived it up.
Yeah, totally.
Life was hard those 6 months, huh?
Life was pretty tough. Well, actually, so this is crazy, but our truck caught fire on the way to Burning Man, hauling an RV.
That's ironic.
Isn't it? Yeah, it's like it's stranger than
fitting.
Fiction.
Yeah. So, okay. Yeah, go ahead.
And just like living on the road out of a camper van or out of a basically a tiny house for that period of time, and changing your environment so often is for some people a dream, and for other people a nightmare. Yeah. And like the truth is it's somewhere in between, and it's really hard sometimes, but it's awesome training for yourself, for your own patience, for learning skills. It's basically, we had this, it's a Chevy truck, like a big diesel that we need to haul this toy hauler that we have that we've been living in. And that's essentially learning how to drive a semi. And like during a snowstorm, going neck and neck with those guys down a highway that's icy is just like, that's the type of training that's hard to explain to anyone who hasn't really been there. But it's been cool.
That's have you seen the show Ice Road Truckers?
Yeah. Like that.
So Abel James was part of the crew.
That's right.
I mean, you're missing
Not
about
for long, though.
200 pounds and an overgrown beer and a slightly
I'm breaking the stereotype.
20-year meth addiction, but you're getting there.
Totally.
Because that's a huge problem. Like those truckers who are driving these massive things of machinery, like thousands of pounds, tons, and they're going over these icy roads and, one way it should be. And then, you almost incentivize driving through the night because you get paid more, and you drive fast because you make it there faster. I mean, that's so dangerous.
That stuff is no joke. Yeah. We've definitely felt like we were on the edge a few times.
So on your road trip then, when you're going there, I mean, I'm imagining, it's truck stop, truck stop, truck stop. Did you ever feel like you were ostracized from the big car league because you were in a camper and the truckers would look at you like you're the lame kid on the schoolyard, or what was that feeling like?
Yeah, in some ways for sure. But my mom's side of the family, actually, her sister married like one of the big guys in a biker gang, essentially. So that was kind of a part of growing up too. That was kind of fun to like slap the chaps back on, so to speak, and live that. But mostly it was this camper I was pretty stoked about, because I was looking like, I'm a musician and I need a practice space almost more than anything else. And so like having a mobile studio is really, really appealing, because I go out to the West Coast in LA to record sometimes, and other times in other places. So I didn't even know this thing existed, but I walked in. It's called a toy hauler, and basically it's like Nitro Circus and all those racing teams. They use it to fill it up with like ATVs and motorbikes, but they started tripping them out with like good kitchens and like a pretty comfy place to sleep, and the stuff that you would need also in base camp, if you're going to go on an adventure or something.
Right.
But basically it's just a big box. And so I took all of the guts out of it. It's like totally modular, and it's just a big box with like almost no furniture. So it encourages me to be on my feet or moving or mobile, and just a bunch of my instruments in there. So it's a practice studio. And
so it's kind of like a U-Haul trailer that you pull behind. Yeah, like a gear trailer.
You make it comfy,
right?
And so it's got like carpet, and it's got kind of a nice feng shui thing going on. And it's all zenned out, and it has our favorite pictures and other things to make it feel kind of homey. But it's been a really cool practice in good habits, I think, living in such a small space.
Your musician bachelor pad.
That's right.
Did you put a slow cooker in there too?
We do have a slow cooker. Yeah, and it usually has. Well, that's an interesting thing, right? Because like my lifestyle is such that a lot of times I'm working or writing or playing music during the day, and I'm not really eating, and I have my crock pot going with broth in it, and so I'm either having like teas or coffee, or coffee with some fat in it, or sipping on, a lot of the time, like soup or broth or some kind of light food that keeps you going. And that's been a really, really healthy thing for me. I've been able to get away with a lot with those kinds of habits.
Yeah. So when you're traveling, and I guess to focus on the road trip aspect of it, I mean, you're on the road. So, when people come on the call or you get emails, I'm sure you get tons of emails from your podcast. It's always the excuses. And the number one is I don't have the time, or I don't have the, I'm on the road, I'm traveling. What do I do? Right. Oh, I can't eat healthy, poor me. What did you do? I mean, you were living that excuse for 6 months. So
we still are, actually. Right now, we're shooting some cooking videos. And so we just decided to rent a place for like a week. And this place is in the mountains of Arizona, which I barely even knew existed before this. Yeah. But like, we're right next to, literally, I'm looking at a Jack in the Box. They've got a cheesecake restaurant right down there.
Yeah, they do.
And there is, fortunately, a Whole Foods and even a Natural Grocers in this town, which is pretty cool.
Okay.
Because you can go there and get organic, fresh produce, stuff like that. But we've been in so many places where, I mean, if you guys who are listening have trouble getting good food, fresh food, and certainly having it be convenient, we totally feel you.
Yeah.
Because most places in America and even other countries make it really an inconvenience to go and source awesome food. If you live in, Austin or a lot of places in California or more metropolitan areas, a lot of them do have, good options. You still have to find them out. But if you're living in the kind of in between the suburbs where the shopping malls repeat themselves every 5 minutes when you're going down the highway, it's hard to find something that isn't Applebee's,
Yeah, for sure. And so you're renting a place in Arizona and, you're traveling a lot. So what did you do? Like, how did you adapt your nutritional approach, and kind of like, what was it before and what is it now?
Well, it was pretty easy to have like our kitchen at home set up with everything that we needed. Like, you just open a drawer, you know exactly where it is. You pull it out, say it's, a greens powder or something like that to throw in a smoothie, or if it's, you know that you have some steaks that are waiting in your chest freezer. That's great, because like there are very few excuses to that roadblock that comes in between, which is like your own healthy habits. So the opposite end of that is like you're in some random, like your RV breaks down in some random town, which happened to us a bunch of times, and you're in this hotel and all they have is like, Folgers coffee and donuts. So what do?
The good stuff, man.
I know, you got to just...
It hurts good.
When in Rome.
Indulge in some Folgers, man. Nothing like it. Fresh roasted, single sourced, organic, shade grown. Continue.
What we do, what we learned to do is to get a lot of really healthy, like shelf-stable fats and keep them in our backpacks and keep them in our luggage. So things like those little packets of coconut manna or coconut, like the coconut mealy stuff. Basically, it's just coconut that's been macerated, but it's all the good stuff, the coconut cream. Little packets of that, or nuts, or we'd roast our own nuts sometimes, kind of make our own gorp. And then, we did have a freezer, and I think anyone who's traveling has at least access to something like that. And if you don't and you're vacationing, you can at least get a cooler. So there was another challenge of it, which is our dog. And she's a 75-pound Labrador Retriever who we try to feed as much as we can raw. So, I mean, that was actually the bigger challenge than feeding us was feeding just the sheer amount of meat that dog eats is a lot to handle. So basically, we would keep a lot of frozen meat, a lot of frozen veggies, and make smoothies. We'd blend up our salad, because like this, you don't want to have a frozen veggie salad if you can't get a fresh one. So it was stuff like that. It's like you can still do it. You just have to plan ahead every once in a while. So if we'd find a store that we really liked, a natural store, whether Whole Foods or just like a mom and pop place, we'd stock up for the next 2 to 3 weeks just in case, a lot of the time, and then freeze whatever we needed to.
It sounds like when people have that excuse of I don't have the time, it's not necessarily they don't have the time, but they don't have the priority, right? Like,
right.
They almost like having that excuse of this is why I can't do it, and they cling on to that story and they don't let it go because it makes them feel fine to keep doing the same things they're doing. And no judgment there. It's just a reality check. It's like saying you can do it if it's a high enough priority. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Well, totally, because there are people who work a lot of different jobs and have very little time. And fortunately, I'm not usually there now, although it goes in bursts, but I certainly was there, and I know how hard that is. And I think we all do. But it's something where if you don't keep your eye on the ball, you're going to get burned in one way or another. It still happens to me. I'll go and just, I get used to anything that I buy, any food that I buy. I look at every single ingredient that's in it. That's just a habit that I have. And every once in a while, I'll just, look at the front, take a quick look at the back, grab it, throw it in the cart. And then when we get home, I'm like, what is this crap? How did they sneak all of these chemicals into this thing that, was so easy to think was healthy? So you just have to be honest with yourself and make sure that before it crosses your lips, you kind of inspect it.
the natural beaver extract, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We spoke about that last time.
So grim.
What was that?
Castoreum, I think is how you say it. And they milk it out of the rear ends of the glands of beaver, the scent glands of beavers. Now, the good news about that, that's just like an illustration of how out of hand things are.
The milking part?
Yeah.
Whose job is it? Like, all right, Abel, you got to go to work today. You got 8 hours of milking duty. Start now.
I don't know if they pay them a little or a lot, but to me, that's still not enough.
Do you get paid by the bucket, or do you get paid by the hour, or do you have quotas to make?
That'll be the next podcast, I think.
Good, man. Yeah, we'll get to the bottom of this. Pun intended. Oh, God.
You went there.
Yeah, I went there. I did. So, okay, avoiding the beaver extracts, and you look at the labels, and you look at the, it's a habit, and you get into it and stuff. And And so do you still get fooled? Or are you better at it or?
Yeah, you get better and better. But the problem here's another big problem is now paleo is catching on, obviously. And we all kind of knew that it would. Anyone who was like present in the community anyway, as a lot of the people who are listening are. And it's so frustrating because everything that I see, almost everything I see with the paleo name on it that's starting to pop up in all these stores and being marketed as paleo is not paleo at all. It's like, it'll be a little paleo granola bar or paleo jerky or whatever. The jerky has 10 grams of sugar in it. The bar that's supposed to be protein rich and totally paleo, it has honey in it, so it's paleo, or maple sugar or whatever else they say caveman ate, which is debatable. And it's supposed to be compatible with a paleo diet, but it's processed food just like anything else is. And so I think a lot of people are being introduced to paleo in the stores now through this junk food, which is a huge problem because paleo, if it wants to get bigger, needs to kind of clean up its reputation, I think, as a group that's just kind of mindlessly eating meat, which is what a lot of the outside world thinks of paleo. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, you touched on two things that I kind of want to hit on. The first is how it's growing, the movement, I guess. And the second is kind of what is paleo. So I guess to tackle the first one, like I was in Costco the other day and pushing the cart and I passed by the book section and it's all books. It's paleo, it's New Year's, it's all this stuff. And it seems really clean and like they're getting really conscious about upgrading their quality, and you start seeing organic in there, and you start seeing gluten-free everywhere, and you start seeing all this stuff. And Costco's quickly becoming a kind of a promoter of this newer crave of upgrading yourself. Have you seen that just in other stores or Costco in particular?
Yeah, you're starting to see. I mean, there's organic food in Walmart now, and that compared to where we started. It's awesome. It's still like full of a lot of problems. There are still challenges there. Things that are, now organic as a label is getting pretty lax, as is pasture raised, grass fed. You can find grass fed meat that was not fed on grass now, but is called grass fed. It's like, and that happens to everything. So as it's expanding now, that said, that's probably better than what people were eating beforehand, even if they kind of fall into that whole trance.
Sure.
But I think it's up to us as the leaders of the movement to really define the parameters and put this all into perspective. Because industrial food, that's why I actually, instead of saying paleo throughout my book and throughout a lot of my stuff, I could see that the term itself was getting kind of confounded. And so I wanted to use wild as basically, it's not mine. It's not a name that I'm trademarking and trying to profit from as some crazy brand or something like that. It's more just like and I think people will find this as they read the book. There's industrial, domesticated type of food and type of living. And then there's the opposite of that, which is wild, which is where we all at our roots came from. And we don't have to go back to 10,000 years ago or longer than that to get in touch with some of the things that are, common sense, good, healthy habits. We can ask our grandmothers, we can go back to our old family recipes that were built around fresh food. And so it really, like, my approach is trying to encourage that as opposed to some term that marketers can really abuse, because we're all starting to see that with paleo.
Yeah, it's almost like back in the day. I remember when I was, 12 or something, John Deere tractor gear was getting really big. Like, people would start, Ashton Kutcher was like wearing John Deere hats, and the dude lives in Hollywood, California, and you're like, there's no way that guy actually like bought a John Deere hat because he's a fan of like, yeah, totally. But it was a fashion statement. It was fashionable. He's wearing this John Deere hat everywhere. So everyone around you started getting these John Deere hats, and it was like the cool thing to get. And it wasn't because you liked John Deere, it was because it was what was fashionable. So it's almost in a way kind of like the Walmart organics. I feel like organics becoming the John Deere hat, and people are just, it's cool, it's fashionable, it's selling, and so they're stocking their stores with it, regardless of if they actually believe in John Deere or organic or free range or whatever. So I like what you're saying about kind of going beyond the label, I guess, to wild food. And you mentioned you have, we talked a little bit before the call your new book, The Wild Diet, kind of getting revamped, and it's on pre-order now, correct?
Yeah, April 7th, it'll be in bookstores everywhere, and right now you can pre-order it, and we're giving a bunch of stuff away too as a incentive to buy a book before you get it.
Okay. And so if I were to get kind of that like press release sheet with the frequently asked questions on there, what would be the Spark Note version of the book? Like, what's the premise behind it? Why did you write the book?
Sorry,
that's like that's two questions. I guess what's the premise around the book? Not we can get into why.
The premise is that we all have the truth about food deep within us, and if we're honest with ourselves, we all know what fresh food is. We all know that when you smell it and you truly taste it, and it comes from a farmer just a few doors down or in the next town, it's better for you than some random stuff that was shipped in a tanker from Chile 6 months ago and then sprayed up with a bunch of wax and chemicals to make it look fresh.
Yeah.
We all know that. And so this is basically about, I hope the book says to people that it's a lot easier than most people are making it out to be. Like a lot of people make money and sacrifice their own consumers' health by trying to make this sound so freaking complicated. But it's really, really simple. It's like eat fresh foods, plenty of vegetables, eat a bunch of different kinds of foods, eat with the seasons. We all know this, When you eat meat, make sure that it doesn't come from a factory farm where all of the animals are sick and pumped up with hormones and antibiotics and pouring with pus and blood and mucus. Like if you look at where your food comes from, it is gnarly and dark where most of our food comes from in America. Right. So it's up to you to really revisit that and develop a relationship with your food. Eat it not sucking down a burrito in the front seat of a car on your way to something else, but using food as a gift if you're cooking for people you love, because it's one of the most intimate things there is, and also getting people back in touch with the meal. Because one of the coolest things about like traveling around the world, as we've been doing, is seeing how different cultures treat their food and their experience of mealtime. And I mean, you go to Italy, and dinner is a far different thing than it is in America. It lasts 3 to 5 times
hours
longer.
Yeah.
It's 5 hours long. It's this like it's Thanksgiving every night, and I think we don't need to do that necessarily, but just knowing that you can every once in a while on a random Tuesday have the best time of your life and eat some really good food. That's what heals you. That's what keeps you away from being obese and sick. It gets to the root of something that's much deeper about all of this.
That's really true though, because that 5-hour dinner, people are hearing that and scoffing at it and saying, I don't have the time. I mean, even in my head, I was like, who's going to do a 5-hour dinner, Abel?
Right.
But it is getting back to what we were talking about at the start of the call, the priority aspect of it. It seems like in America, maybe to generalize, we're all caught up in this rush of being productive and getting things done and maximizing our time, and the slowdown isn't there. It's kind of like we're all stressed out and we don't take time to recover. And so maybe a theme I'm hearing emerge from what you're talking about is taking that time and prioritizing it and getting back to before we were all so stressed out and strung out.
Yeah, we're totally strung out. And all these, I talk about this in my book too, it's cool when you live without all the devices for a while that are like blurping at you all day. It seems like every new thing that you get is like, merp, pay attention to me. Merp, you need to do this. Merp.
I just got a text message during this call.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I get a Skype message, even though I thought I turned all that stuff off.
Yeah.
Because every time you get an update, they turn it back on for you, whatever.
So considerate of them.
Not bitter about that at all.
We're trying to do a podcast and Skype is just beeping at us. It's true though, man.
But yeah, you go out and everyone knows at this point the phantom bloops and the phantom vibrations in their pockets or whatever. And man, you get away from that for a few weeks and it's really hard to come back. It's like because we sold a lot of our electronics too and just kind of lived literally in the woods. Like we didn't have cell phone service. We didn't have internet. We didn't even have running water a lot of the time. We were carrying our water. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but we wanted this to be kind of an exercise of what does it mean to be alive? Like, what is walking the walk? Because this is what it is. Yeah. You know, this is what our I mean, my grandmother had to heat all of the water for her 7 kids on the stove. And you don't really need to go to the gym when you live like that. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I think a lot of us are so stressed out, and now we have to kind of like force all of this lifestyle stuff into our own lives that used to be built in. So getting back a little bit away from all those machines and all those networks that are in them and all the people who, are kind of like taking your energy all day, basically allow that to exist and come to peace with itself.
Sure.
And then you can get your brain back.
Sure. It's almost, when you were talking, I thought of it, it's almost like we're reacting to everything. You wake up, You check your phone, you're getting the Twitter messages. You're not really controlling that. You're reacting to it. You're trying to meditate. You're on your iPhone. You have this track you're meditating to, and boom, 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 things are coming up at you. You're reacting to it. Emails pop up throughout the day. You're reacting to it. We're almost in this not creating mode, but this response mode. And I think that stresses you out because you feel like you're just this thing reacting to the stimulus around you, and you kind of lose yourself in that process. And so I really,
it's addictive.
It is. Yeah, it's addictive. You feel like you're doing something when you're reacting, because if I can just get my inbox to 0, okay, that's the pass-fail mark of my day if it was a success. Or it's funny you say that, because one of the things that, made me go off the grid in a lot of ways, because I was doing, like I said, like for 2.5 years, every week, did an hour-long show, and all the blog posts and all the production and all the other stuff, not to mention like my normal life and the other projects and the music and whatever. But it got to this point where enough people were listening and writing to me, and a bunch of peers, in the field wanted to work together and partner and do all this stuff. And the idea of inbox 0 just became, I had to face this with myself, literally not something I could do maybe ever again. And so once you get to the point of knowing that there's too much coming at you, then you need to kind of reevaluate, because if it's tearing you up that much, if it's taking that much energy away from the other things that you could really productively be doing, then it's not serving you to be reacting to this stuff all the time. Yeah. The inbox 0 thing's kind of funny. I heard somewhere where someone did this thing called email bankruptcy, where you basically have so many emails in there, like 600, 700.
That's what it is, bankruptcy.
Yeah, and they just declare bankruptcy, and they send to all their contacts an email saying, "Hey,
good idea.
Not responding, just declaring bankruptcy. So we're starting fresh tomorrow." Okay, got it. Good. All right, 0. There's an email hack for you.
That's terrific.
Yeah,
I like that.
Hacking your email. So I'm curious then. We've been talking about going off the grid. We've been talking about kind of getting back. Is there anything this time around, looking at your business, looking at your calls, looking at your approach, that you're going to do differently, that you learned, not doing that again, or you thought of, I want to implement that this time around?
Yeah. Well, let's start with the things that I'm doing right now. Like, it used to be that when I first started, I would record the interviews when I could and when they came up, and that was really hard. Yeah. So now I batched them. Like, this week we rented this place to do the cooking videos. Like, I made sure I got a haircut. It's pretty much, I'm wearing ready pants right now just in case, and it's cool to batch it that way, because I know that in a week I'm getting a lot of work done, and then after that we're going to Peru for a few weeks and doing some like deeper spiritual type stuff and exploring the world and being able to be totally present when we're there. Knowing that we're off the grid, not checking email. And so I think it's that cycle of those two things. And I mean, for a lot of people, you're not going to be able to just like fly to Peru for a couple of weeks and tell everyone like, hey, resolve it, I'm bankrupt or whatever. I'm going to be very honest about the fact that I've been working on this for years, trying to get to this point where I could do that. And you just have to kind of start small. At the beginning, take a day. On Sundays, I'm off limits to like pretty much everyone, with the exception of family or whoever I'm with. It's a sacred day in many interpretations of the word. I think that you need to kind of keep for yourself in some way a day like that once a week, where you can just recover from all of the things that you're going through, so that you can really like kick butt on Monday and look forward to it. So I've been especially conscious as I build a schedule, instead of letting my schedule build itself, which is really tempting because it sucks to sit down and schedule everything out. I've been really intentional about which days are for what, where we're going to be, to make sure that it's what we want. And then we can look forward to it. And we can look forward to every Sunday when we play a game or like do something that's kind of ritualized. Because that's one of the deeper things that I wanted to impregnate into the book itself and into my work, is that we all used to have this. We all, out of necessity a lot of the time, we all used to have this, but we had some community thing that connected us with the people around us in the real world that we would go to regularly. And I think once we get out of schools, once we get out of our normal jobs, or we switch jobs, or we lose a job or something like that, it's really, it's hard to take that initiative to build that awesome thing for you that you know is good for you and keep doing it again.
Right. Okay. And so with the book then, going on this kind of what you're doing differently or what you learned, anything from the past, nutritional wise or health wise or lifestyle wise, that you're going to incorporate this time around?
Yeah. More than anything else, it's just building the habits around what we know is already good for us, I think. So I've become a lot better at making sure that we get greens every day. So if we don't get a salad, we have a green smoothie. And if it's with fresh, that's great. But if it's not, we make sure we have frozen stuff too. And we also make sure that like the fruits that we have aren't too sugary. And if we're going to put like greens in that, like a greens powder or vitamin C and other vitamins, like making sure that you order too much of that stuff in advance. Because if you run out of it in the middle of something else, like habits are going to fall off. So it's almost like the Costco approach, right? Like buying your good habits in bulk is something that can really help you out a lot. Because if you have, a bunch of pizzas in your fridge or in your freezer compared to a bunch of just like kale that's already mixed with a bunch of other veggies that you just throw in the blender, it's really easy to just throw in the veggies instead of the pizza. But if you're just left with the pizza, it's like, I'm hungry.
Sure. Yeah, I was just reading that book, The Power of Habit. Picked it up in an airport. It was the first book I read of 2015.
Nice.
Really big eye-opener just on how we're just a bundle of habits, and how if you want to change your life, you need to change your habits, and everything from how you wake.
Work.
Yeah, it takes work. It takes conscious effort and conscious work. You don't just kind of fall into better habits. Oops, I guess I'm eating organic and whole foods. Right. Not like you gotta make the effort. You gotta do the research. You gotta go for it, but you gotta take action. And so the habit forming, what you're talking about, man, that's so true. Like, and the biggest point I got from that book, why I'm talking about this, is because it said, if you want to change your life, change your habits, but don't try and eliminate habits. You have to swap them. You have to make a lateral shift, because habits don't go away. They just swap forms. Anytime you eliminate something, it's like this vacuum that needs to suck something into its place. People who quit smoking, now they drink a lot, or people who quit drinking, now they smoke a lot, or they gossip, or they watch crappy television, Kardashians, like we need these habits to swap in and swap out. So, did you find that with some of maybe changing habits or your lifestyle, or does that resonate with you?
Yeah, the biggest thing, and I'm huge on like the habit change and that being the way to like actually live well. I can't really turn the camera around right now, but if you looked over there in that room, what you'd see is 2 guitars, an amplifier, a saxophone, a speaker, and then a bunch of books. So when I walk in that room, and there is a huge TV because we're renting this place, but it's off and we don't really watch like the channel TV or whatever. So it's more just like an object there. It's not something that's sucking us in as much, but it's like,
looks cool.
Yeah, it looks cool. But the guitars and the saxophone, to me, when I'm sitting there bored, look way cooler. And so it's about building that around you no matter where you are. So if you're on the road, I have actually dedicated a whole part of my book to this Abel survival pack. And so like it's always like within a few feet of me, there's like this ugly old Camelback backpack that I got, like 7 years ago or something like that. But it's been with me pretty much everywhere. And that thing has like all of my tonics, teas, homemade supplements, other supplements that I bring along for like adrenal support. It's got activated charcoal if I get poisoned or diarrhea or want to whiten my teeth. It's got coconut oil if I need, some sort of moisturizer or cooking fat or whatever. It's even got like this little, I went into a hiking store and I found this thing for $10 that it's called a spice missile. You can unscrew the top and each section of it has a total of like 6 spices in it. Huh. So I always have really good like white pepper from one of our travels. I have Himalayan sea salt, really good salt. I have cinnamon. I have organic cocoa. And then I have like this garlic seasoning that I made, and then hot pepper. Like with wherever I go, with whatever's in front of me. So if all you can get someplace is hard-boiled eggs, that's okay because at least you can flavor them.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Get the cacao powder on the eggs, whatever you're into, man.
That's what I'm talking about, man.
It sounds like it goes along with a theme I'm getting is prepping in advance, especially with the habit changing and just your lifestyle and batching things together. And, we talked about switching grocery stores and planning in advance and planning your habits out and eliminating excuses. For the person listening at home that's ready to make changes and they want to apply kind of what we're talking about, do you have 1 or 2 big things that they can do right now to help either eliminate excuses or start adding in better habits?
Totally. In the morning, that's... There's an awesome book by Brian Tracy called Eat That Frog, I think is the title of it, which is basically about, it's such a wonderful visual. Everyone knows that like there's at least one, usually a few, big pieces of gnarly, ugly work that you need to do pretty much every day. And that could be in your personal life, your relationship life, your work life, whatever else. But it's great when you wake up and you're already grumpy and you're already kind of like dreading the day to just like jam through whatever that is. If it takes 10 minutes, that's great. If it takes 30, that's awesome too. But maybe it'll take the first, big portion of your day. Do that one thing and get it out of the way. And then basically you can coast through the rest of the day and you can use that as momentum to get a lot more done because when you front load the things that you need to do, you feel a lot better. So you can do that with a really ugly thing that might appeal to some people, but I'll offer a contrast as well. And I do this also every day, is take at least a half an hour, usually about an hour to myself to do, I do Tai Chi and Qigong in the mornings, as well as sometimes like yoga or mobility or balance type work. And then also usually like instead of exercising in big ways, a few days a week like I used to do. Now I like doing like 2 to 5 minutes of exercise pretty much every day. And so getting that in there as well. So that's done, the physical movement part, also the mental, meditate every morning. And then I go through a bunch of other like gratitude exercises and things that sound woo-woo and are easy to make fun of if you don't do them. But they're really hard to do and they're pretty much the best thing you could ever do, not just for your own mind, but your own like health. And the people around you do. It just makes you a better person,
right? When
you do this often. And so I do that every single day, and I do it every single morning, usually within like 20 minutes of waking up. And it doesn't matter how much time you have. Like everyone has that or can make that at some point, even if it's just starting with 5 minutes of jumping rope or something like that in the morning. Like get it done, and you'll feel so much better.
Yeah. And then like you said, you mentioned the keyword momentum. And I'm curious, what do you think about quotas? Like lowering your quota? It's something I've been experimenting with, and just kind of making the pass fail mark a lot lower, so you feel like you've completed something. Are you a fan of that?
I'm a big fan of that because for a while there, especially because I was an athlete, and you try to dictate your workouts, especially as a guy, as like how monstrous and painful they are.
Yeah.
But if you start to, actually, I had James Clear on my show a while back who talked about this, doing it in his own life. And he would go out and do deadlifts. I think it was just one exercise, and sometimes it was even just one rep instead of going out and doing your whole thing. And he actually was able to, up all of his, or most of his metrics that way. Most of his goals went up. His lifts got heavier, and that's just such a mental thing, right? It's just from
the one rep.
But doing it and dedicating yourself to it.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So I think most of the time it was one exercise and you do it to failure. That's kind of what I do. So basically I give my signature workout, whatever it is like, yesterday I knew that I'd be coming here and wouldn't have like a pull-up bar or something like that. But in the trailer, I can actually do pull-ups off the bed. And so I did 27 to failure each time, just twice. Like took like 5 minutes in between, did something else. And that was my workout for the day.
Yeah.
In addition to the like Qigong in the morning, which is also a different kind of workout or whatever. But yeah, if you do that, that's so much better than just like kind of dreading your workout or putting your shoes on and being like, oh, I can't believe I'm doing this. And then, you know, something happens on the way or you're late for your class and you can't do the group thing anymore. It's just, you know, if you find yourself getting to that, then it's time to switch it up and do something that's more, like you said, results oriented and practical in the sense that you can just get it done and feel good about it.
I think when you lower your quota, like you said, either it's just one exercise or doing pull-ups to failure, when you set the bar really low and you can complete it and feel like you have a win under your belt, you're more likely to do that. It's like it's the carrot or the stick, right? And I found I've never really had a problem necessarily motivating myself to work out, but I definitely found when I was working out, it would just drag. And I was you know, checking the watch and looking up there and finding more people to talk to and less time to work out. And I mean, I go to LA Fitness. That's like, you know, social hour over there.
The mixer,
It's the mixer, man. You know everyone by name. But I found my past fail mark being a 15-minute, 20-minute sauna. Because some days I would just avoid going to the gym. But I said, you know what? You can go there and take a sauna. All you have to do is sit there.
Yeah.
And man, as soon as you're done with that, you got warmed up and you feel like moving. You feel like doing something else. You feel like you don't feel like going home yet. And so just something as simple as just showing up or maybe having your shoes by your bed and just getting them on and stepping outside or setting a pass fail mark to where it's really, really low, still doable. And you'll always feel it kind of going beyond.
Yeah. Like I have this 70-pound kettlebell, which to anyone who's ever worked out with something like that, it's like kind of terrible, right? It's like barbaric almost. And so I found that I just wasn't doing those exercises. I was doing other stuff instead and just kind of like rationalizing, looking at that thing and being like, no, man, not right now. I've been burned before. But anyway, what I did was basically just told myself, all right, we'll do, 37 swings. Okay. And then, I just put it right there. And in between me walking and doing some, I think I was moving, boxes around or something like that. And I was just like, yeah, I can do 37 of those right now. And then I did it again. And so then I'm just like, well, 5 minutes later, I'm all kind of warmed up and feeling like, all right, well, that's not too bad. And then I would do, like 21 presses with it and then do that again 5 minutes later. And then I would cap it off at, if I felt like doing that one more time and just do some like deadlift type things, I would do that twice to less than failure, right? Like with a more like brutal exercise like that, sometimes it's better to say, I can do 37 or like I can do 5. Knowing that you can do more than that, but that you won't is a really good motivator sometimes because you can be like psyched and just know it's almost like you finished it already in your head.
Sure.
You're not dreading those last moments that are just, that's where the big injuries can happen too. And for me, I actually, in August, I was hiking with my friend Pedram Shoja and we're going to be shooting a new show. And while we were hiking, I broke my foot making a jump. And, so I had to change all of my exercises and all of my habits. And now I'm like, especially as I came back from injury, I'm just like, okay, I'm going to focus on form, not on being an idiot and doing monster lifts,
Right. Man. Well, Abel, to pull a phrase out of your book, I've listened to your show a few times. Just about now, you always say, all right, we're coming up on time. Want to respect your time. Get you out of here. Howdy. How you doing, folks?
I've never said that.
So we're coming up on time. I know you got a book out, man. Can you kind of give us the logistics of where we can find out more about it? It sounds really interesting. And I mean, it's what we've been talking about this whole time. So where would folks go to find out more about that?
Yeah, The Wild Diet is what it's called. And it's anywhere that bookstores will have it. April 7th, I think it is. You can pre-order it already. And then best place to find it, though, is wilddietbook.com. We're giving away a bunch of cooking gear, and basically, if you want my little spiel on the book, it's supposed to be a diet book for people who don't like diet books. It's basically written as memoirs, as stories.
Okay.
And they encapsulate more than 50 of our like best family recipes that we got from Allison's crazy huge Mormon family, my family from the middle of nowhere in New Hampshire, and then combined that with a lot of the people who are listeners to the show, and made some really kick butt food, and we eat it all the time. So wilddietbook.com is where you find all that good stuff.
Awesome, Abel. And Fat Burning Man is the podcast, the number one on iTunes. I say that with no bitterness at all. No. Maybe one day.
You got this, man. I'm on your show now, so you can totally do it.
Voodoo doll of Abel just every morning.
Oh, no.
Fat Burning Man. All right, dude. Hey, it was fun getting you on the call, man. Really appreciate you coming by.
Too.
You got a lot of energy. I enjoyed your stuff, and we'll definitely check out your book and promote the heck out of it on the show.
Right on. Thanks, Clark.